So I'm going to show you a slideshow that was put together by a couple of animal phys students last year because it's really fantastic animation that's going to walk us through the power stroke and also show how calcium is involved in moving the troponin tropomyosin complex to allow the power stroke to take place. So here's a little cartoon that they put together for us. So we've got myosin down here on the bottom. We've got actin up here, illustrated as the two filaments with an alpha helix structure. And I've also highlighted their illustration for the troponin complex, which is composed of three subunits. So the I subunit, which is bound to the two adjacent actin filaments. The T subunit, which is bound to the tropomyosin you see running along here in black, and then the C subunit, which contains the binding site for calcium. This also shows us the myosin binding sites, which would normally be covered by tropomyosin when there's no calcium present. And again, here's tropomyosin, which is also an alpha helix dimer, and each component will cover up 7 active actin subunits. Here's our friend calcium, which is the key regulatory ion for muscle contractions, and when muscle is relaxed, the intracellular concentrations of calcium will be very, very low, 1 × 10⁻⁷ moles. And then last but not least, here's myosin in the primed position, so it has hydrolyzed ATP, so ADP plus phosphate groups, ready to go. So when an action potential travels down a neuron and then travels down the surface of the muscle fiber, it will then stimulate the sarcoplasmic reticulum. And the sarcoplasmic reticulum will then release a wave of calcium ions. Those calcium ions will then bind to the C subunit of troponin. And that's going to cause a shape change, a conformational change, so that TNI subunit is going to detach from actin. The whole complex slides, and that's going to reveal the myosin binding sites. Myosin will then attach to those binding sites, and it still has the ADP and phosphate group attached. But at this point, the phosphate group will be dropped, and that will actually strengthen the myosin-actin interaction. And then as the ADP dissociates, that will result in the power stroke that will shift the actin filament towards the center of the sarcomere, so actual movement. Then, as we complete the power stroke, ATP is going to bind to the myosin, and that's going to cause the myosin to detach from actin again. Myosin will then hydrolyze ATP, and that will allow it to return to its primed or cocked position, which will allow a new cycle to take place. So when calcium is present, the power stroke can continue occurring, without interruption. So contraction will continue, and then as the signal from the motor neuron ends, calcium will then be pumped back into the sarcoplasmic reticulum, right, using active transport. And that's going to then lead to the conformational change for troponin and tropomyosin, such that myosin can now no longer tightly bind to actin. So that will bring the power stroke to an end. And then just for fun, these guys also actually put together a TikTok video to illustrate the actin-myosin, troponin-tropomyosin calcium interaction. So we'll take a look. One more time. There we go.